Hi, I'm Dr. Lurie, a physician specializing in psychiatry and the author of Psyche Politics, How to Read the Political Mind. The following gives you an idea of what Psyche Politics is about, something that a lot of people have been asking. Actually, this is taken from a mini-course which you can get free on the Psyche Politics website. So the following mini-course on Psyche Politics will cover the biological and psychological origins of the mind. It also covers how the variations we all have influence us politically. This refers to both voters and politicians. The approach of Psyche Politics is based on human biology. For this reason, Psyche Politics applies at any time and any place. Any place they're humans, that is. I will tell you a story. It's a story about life. You've lived life, your life, so you will recognize yourself in the story. However, because everyone's story is a bit different, it may be hard to be sure what are the constants in all of us. Many times in taking this mini-course, you will say, yeah, sure, I know that. What's so special about Psyche Politics? More than likely, there will be other times when you'll say, really? I didn't know other people went through that. Or, I guess there are lots of people whose upbringing was so different. Stick with it, however, and you'll come to understand how the political mind works. People don't remember what was going on when their unconscious minds were formed in infancy and childhood. That's why Psyche Politics takes the path defined by countless psychiatrists and psychologists to describe a framework in which we all exist and progress through life. Once the unconscious and preconscious aspects of the mind are understood, you will see much more of what is going on in politics, in your mind, the minds of other voters, and the minds of politicians. You will see what is hidden in plain sight. You'll be able to connect the political dots to see the inevitable path a society will take if one or the other political decision is made. Moreover, you'll see why politicians take us on self-destructive paths. So here goes. So here are the basics of human life. All things, humans included, must have and pass on in their genes whatever it takes to survive and to reproduce. If not, they'll die out. Animals move, that is, they behave. So whatever it is about animal behavior that tends to lead to survival of the individual and its reproduction must also be inherited, or these characteristics will die out. Animals who do not gather food die out. Animals who do not gather food for their young also die out, for they have less young. At the same time, the characteristic of not gathering food dies out too. Now, we humans are incredibly flexible, so much so that the two genders overlap in most capacities, apart from the basics that males sire children and females bear them. That is, built on top of our basic biology is a complex culture, part of which is our psychology. In addition to our genes, culture also influences human behavior, including human political behavior. Nonetheless, if the basic behaviors of survival and reproduction are not carried out and passed on to the next generation, these very cultural behaviors will also die out. This is because the people who behave according to culture are also biological creatures. Evolutionists, and I'm not talking about creationists here, evolutionists believe that the capability to behave in survival and reproductive ways is genetic. Animals don't know why they're driven to do certain acts. Beavers build dams. Fish and birds migrate. They don't have to know why. Those who do so survive, while those who do not die out, along with the characteristic of building dams or migrating. Those things are programmed into their genes. You can see an evolutionary process in politicians. In evolution, a process called natural selection is at work. The faster lion catches more antelopes and survives longer. It thus has more offspring with the ability to run faster. Natural selection also works with politicians. though genes are likely not so much at work. With politicians, those who compromise their principles so as not to lose votes will be left with votes. Those politicians who stand on principle or are inattentive to their constituents lose votes and thus lose elections. The result? Those politicians who are elected over and over are those who will do what it takes to get and keep votes. They might compromise principles, but they're still elected. This is natural selection in politics in a democracy. Genes determine our biological makeup. They determine the way the brain, including our brain, starts out and its capabilities. The brain has a variety of functions, such as regulating sleep, blood pressure, hormones, and more. The function of the brain called the mind is our flexible guide. It determines what we do and how we feel. The brain then, primarily laid down by our genes, develops. As we grow up, some of its functions, such as language or sight, are relatively automatic. However, much of what the brain develops into is determined by our environment and by other people. If our initial environment was unsafe, for example due to war or abuse, we develop behaviors and values accordingly. If our primary caretakers, usually our mothers, shape us one way or another, we develop values accordingly. Ultimately, the process is so complex that none of us is much like the others, except in the basics of survival and reproduction. Now, one thing that fuels the drive to behave so as to survive and reproduce is pleasure. We feel good, pleasure, getting milk or food. And we feel bad when we are hungry, displeasure. This is such a simple statement, you might wonder why I waste time making it. However, it is at the bottom of a large part of our political controversies, as we'll soon see. In summary, this lesson lays down the fundamentals of human existence. We're genetically driven to do what makes for our survival and reproduction. Pleasure fuels what we do in these regards. We act according to what is called the pleasure principle when we do what's necessary to survive and reproduce. If these behaviors did not bring pleasure, we would likely not do them, or we would not do them as much. It seems so simple, but keep it in mind. Pleasure fuels what we do to survive and reproduce. It also fuels what politicians do to get and keep votes. Okay, I'll stop on this note. Remember it because it influences political behavior more than anyone has appreciated. Remember it. Pleasure fuels what we do to survive and reproduce. This is the pleasure principle. In the next lesson, we'll see how what the infant learns from its very first days of life influences us politically. Also, we'll describe the origins of racism. I'll see you later.